the hidden growth engine in every client relationship, referral selling, and long-term sales strategy. Most people think the sale ends when the contract is signed. That's actually where most people start losing money. Here's what I mean. You close a deal, you feel good, you move on to the next prospect. You go back to cold outreach, back to fighting for attention, back to convincing strangers you're worth their time. And you do that over and over and over again, month after month, year after year, burning energy on the hardest part of selling, which is earning trust from zero, while ignoring the single most valuable asset you already have sitting right in front of you. The client you just served, not because they owe you something, not because you should pester them for favors, but because if you served them well, if you actually solved a real problem, you've already done the hardest work in all of sales. You've built trust, and trust, unlike attention, doesn't depreciate. It compounds. So let me walk you through exactly why most people fail to turn clients into a referral-driven growth engine, what's actually happening in the brain during a referral versus a cold pitch, and how to build a repeatable system that makes referral selling not a hope but a structural inevitability. Let's start with the mistake almost everyone makes. When most salespeople or entrepreneurs think about referrals, they think about it as a transaction. They close the deal, wait a few weeks, then send an email that says something like, "Hey, do you know anyone else who might benefit from what I do?" And then they sit back and wonder why nothing happens. Here's the problem. That question puts the entire cognitive burden on the other person. You're essentially asking your client to do your prospecting for you. You're asking them to scan their mental Rolodex, evaluate who might be a fit, risk their own reputation by making an introduction, and do all of that for no clear reason other than you asked nicely. That's not a referral strategy, that's a wish. And the deeper problem is this: most people treat referrals as an afterthought. It's the last thing they think about after the sale, when it should be the first thing they design for before the sale even begins. The difference between someone who occasionally gets a referral and someone who builds an entire business on referral chains is not luck, not charisma, not even how good their product is. It's architecture. It's whether the entire client experience was built, from the first conversation to the last follow-up, with the referral pathway already embedded in the structure. So here's the core judgment, and I want you to sit with this for a moment. Every client interaction is either building or destroying a chain of future relationships. There is no neutral transaction. Every time someone works with you, they walk away with a feeling, a story, and a level of certainty about who you are. That feeling, that story, that certainty, it either makes them want to connect you with people they care about, or it makes them quietly forget you ever existed. And most of the time, when people forget you, it's not because you did a bad job. It's because you didn't give them a reason to remember you in a specific, useful, emotionally resonant way. Let me explain what's happening at the neurological level, because this is where it gets interesting. When a client decides to refer you to someone, a colleague, a friend, a business partner, that decision doesn't happen in the rational, analytical part of the brain. It doesn't start with them carefully weighing your credentials and your pricing and your track record. It starts in the limbic system. It starts with emotion. Specifically, it starts with two things: the feeling of certainty and the feeling of generosity. Let me break those down. First, certainty. Your client's amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection and emotional evaluation, is constantly running a background process that asks one question: is this safe? When someone considers referring you, their brain is not primarily asking, is this person competent? It's asking, will I look bad if I recommend them? That's a threat assessment question. It's about their reputation, their social standing, their relationship with the person they'd be referring you to. This is why being pretty good at what you do is not enough to generate referrals. Pretty good doesn't cross the certainty threshold. Your client needs to feel, not just think, but feel that recommending you is a zero-risk, high-reward move for their own social capital. And that feeling of certainty doesn't come from your pitch. It comes from their experience. It comes from how you made them feel during the entire process, the onboarding, the communication, the delivery, the follow-through, the moments when things went wrong and how you handled it. Research in consumer psychology consistently shows that people don't remember most of what happened during an experience. They remember the peak emotional moment and the end. This is called the peak end rule, and it was most famously studied by Daniel Kahneman. What this means for you practically is that the last interaction your client has with you disproportionately determines whether they'll refer you. If the project ends with a whimper, a final invoice, a generic thank you email, radio silence, that's what their brain encodes. If it ends with something unexpected, something that makes them feel genuinely seen or valued, that's what sticks. Second, generosity. Here's something most people don't understand about referrals. When someone refers you, they're not doing you a favor. Or rather, that's not how it feels to them if the referral is genuine. What's actually happening in their brain is that they're doing a favor for the person they're referring you to. They're saying, I know someone who can solve your problem. That activates the brain's reward circuitry, specifically the ventral striatum and the medial prefrontal cortex, the same areas that light up when people give gifts or help others. It feels good to connect someone you trust with someone who needs help. This is a critical reframe. You are not asking your client for a favor when you set up a referral pathway. You are giving them an opportunity to be generous to someone else. And this is where most people miss it. That only works if they genuinely believe you'll deliver value to the person they're connecting you with. Which brings us back to certainty. It's a loop. So the neuroscience tells us two things. 1. Referrals are emotionally driven, not rationally driven, which means the quality of the relationship matters more than the quality of the sales pitch. And 2, the architecture of the experience, especially how it peaks and how it ends, determines whether the referral impulse is triggered at all. Now let's go up a level. Let's look at this through the lens of some deeper mental models, because what we're really talking about here is not a sales tactic. It's a fundamental philosophy about how value moves through the world. Naval Ravikant has this idea that stuck with me deeply. He talks about how you should play long-term games with long-term people. Most people hear that and nod, and then go right back to optimizing for the next transaction. But think about what it actually means in the context of client relationships. Every client is a node in a network. When you treat a client as a one-time transaction, you're extracting value from a single node and then moving on. When you treat a client as a long-term relationship, even after the project is over, even when there's no immediate revenue on the table, you're investing in a network. And networks don't grow linearly. They grow exponentially. One good relationship leads to 2 introductions. 2 introductions lead to 5. 5 led to a community leads to a reputation, and a reputation, once it reaches a critical threshold, starts doing your selling for you. This is the compound interest of relationships. And just like financial compound interest, the returns are invisible in the short term and staggering in the long term. The person who spends 5 years building deep, trust-rich relationships with 40 clients will almost always outperform the person who spends 5 years cold pitching 4,000 strangers. Not because cold outreach doesn't work, it does, for some people in some contexts, but because the cost of trust acquisition from zero is brutally high, and most individuals don't have the infrastructure to do it at scale. This connects to something Charlie Munger talks about repeatedly, the idea of deserving what you want. Munger's framing is deceptively simple. He says, the best way to get what you want is to deserve what you want. It's applied to referrals. This means you don't get referrals by asking for them. You get referrals by being so undeniably good, so reliable, so thoughtful in how you deliver, that referring you becomes the obvious thing to do. It becomes almost irrational not to refer you. And this is where I want to push back on something that a lot of sales training gets wrong. A lot of referral systems teach you scripts. After the close, say this exact sentence. Use this exact phrasing to ask for a referral. And look, scripts can be useful as training wheels. But if the underlying experience doesn't warrant a referral, no script in the world will save you. You can't script your way out of mediocrity. The script is the last mile. The first 900 miles are about the quality of the relationship. There's a principle from the Talmudic business tradition that speaks to this directly. In that tradition, a transaction is never just an exchange of goods for money. It's an exchange of trust. And trust is governed by covenant, by an unspoken but deeply felt agreement that both parties will act with integrity, not just during the deal, but after it. The idea is that your reputation in the marketplace is not built by what you promise. It's built by what you do when no one is checking. When the project is delivered and the invoice is paid and there's no contractual obligation left, how do you show up? That's what builds the kind of trust that generates referrals. Now let me connect this to the concept of the growth engine itself, because I think a lot of people here turn every client into a growth engine, and they think it means every client should refer you. That's not realistic, and it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that every client interaction should be designed so that the referral pathway exists. Whether any individual client walks that path is up to them. Your job is to build the road. Some clients will drive on it, some won't. But if the road doesn't exist, nobody can drive on it, no matter how much they liked working with you. Let me also address the attraction angle here, because I know it comes up, and I want to be precise about it. There's a popular idea that if you just vibrate at a higher frequency, or put out positive energy, clients and referrals will flow to you. I'm not going to use that framework because it's not verifiable, and it collapses under scrutiny. But there is a real mechanism underneath it that's worth understanding. Here's what's actually happening. When you're operating from a place of genuine confidence, not forced positivity, not affirmations, but actual confidence rooted in competence and a track record of delivery, your behavior changes in ways that are observable and influential. You stop signaling neediness, you stop over-explaining, you stop chasing, and paradoxically, that makes people more drawn to working with you and more likely to recommend you. This isn't mystical, it's basic social neuroscience. Your mirror neurons, the neural circuits that allow you to unconsciously read and mimic the emotional states of others, are picking up signals from everyone you interact with. When a client interacts with someone who is desperate, their mirror neurons register that desperation, and it triggers a subtle avoidance response. When they interact with someone who is calm, certain, and focused on delivering value rather than extracting it, their mirror neurons register safety and competence. That's what attraction actually is in a business context. It's the neurological residue of how you make people feel. And here's the thing about confidence that connects back to my own philosophy. Confidence is not a feeling you find. It's not a mindset you unlock. It's a byproduct of not caring about the outcome. When you're not attached to whether this specific client refers you, when you're simply focused on delivering the best possible work and building a genuine relationship, that detachment from outcome registers as confidence. And confidence, paradoxically, is the very thing that makes the referral more likely. So the mechanism is, deliver exceptional value, detach from the need for a specific outcome, and let the quality of the relationship do the signaling. That's not the law of attraction. That's the law of competence meeting social neuroscience. Now let's talk about how to actually build this, because understanding the theory is necessary but not sufficient. You need a system, and systems require deliberate practice, feedback loops, and specific behaviors. Here's the framework I use, and I'll walk you through each piece. Step 1. Design the experience for memorability, not just satisfaction. Satisfaction is the baseline. If your client is satisfied, that means you met expectations. Meeting expectations does not trigger referrals. Exceeding expectations in a specific, memorable way does. And the key word is specific. Don't try to exceed expectations across every dimension. That's exhausting and unsustainable. Instead, identify one or two moments in the client journey where you can create disproportionate impact. For example, the onboarding moment. When a new client starts working with you, they're in a heightened emotional state. They've just made a decision, they might have buyer's anxiety, they don't fully know what to expect. If you can design that first interaction to be surprisingly smooth, surprisingly clear, surprisingly human, that becomes a peak moment. Their brain encodes it. It sets the emotional tone for everything that follows, or the delivery moment. When you hand off the final work, don't just send a file. Contextualize it. Walk them through what you did and why. Show them the thinking behind the work, not just the output. When people understand the depth of what went into something, they value it more. And more importantly, they can articulate that value to others. You're essentially giving them the language to refer you, or the unexpected follow-up. 2 weeks after the project ends, reach out, not to sell, not to ask for a referral, just to check in, ask how things are going. Share an article that's relevant to their business. This costs you almost nothing, but it violates the expectation of silence, and that violation is what creates memorability. This is deliberate practice applied to client experience design. You're not hoping for a good interaction. You're engineering specific moments that have disproportionate impact on memory and emotion. Step 2. Make the referral easy, specific, and low risk. Here's where most people fail, even when the relationship is strong. They say, if you know anyone who could use my help, send them my way. That's too vague. Your client doesn't know what anyone looks like. They don't know what problem to listen for. They don't know how to introduce you without it feeling awkward. Instead, be specific. Say something like, I work best with mid-sized companies that are trying to scale their operations but keep hitting bottlenecks in their internal communication. If you ever come across someone in that situation, I'd love to have a conversation with them. Now your client has a filter. They know exactly what to listen for. And because you've described a problem rather than a service, their brain will naturally pattern match when they encounter someone with that problem in conversation. This is connected to how the reticular activating system works, the RAS, that cluster of neurons in your brainstem that filters incoming information based on relevance. When you give your client a specific problem to listen for, you're essentially programming their RAS to notice it. They'll start hearing those conversations that they would have otherwise filtered out. Not because they're trying to help you, but because you've given their brain a pattern to recognize. You can also reduce friction by offering to do the introduction yourself. Instead of asking your client to send an email or make a call, say, would it be okay if I sent you a short message you could forward? That way you don't have to explain what I do, I'll do that part. You've just removed 90% of the effort, and removing effort is the single most effective way to increase the probability of any behavior. This is basic behavioral economics. The easier something is to do, the more likely it gets done. Step 3. Build a follow-up rhythm that sustains the relationship without being transactional. This is where long-term relationship skills come in, and it's where most salespeople and entrepreneurs completely drop the ball. They either follow up too aggressively, which feels like pressure, or they don't follow up at all, which means they disappear. The right rhythm is what I'd call value first, low frequency, high relevance. Every touchpoint should offer something, an insight, a resource, a genuine compliment, a relevant introduction. And it should happen at a frequency that's sustainable for you and welcome for them. For most B2B relationships, that's somewhere between once a month and once a quarter. Here's the critical principle. You're not following up to stay top of mind. That phrase has been corrupted by bad marketing. You're following up to stay top of trust. There's a difference. Top of mind means they remember your name. Top of trust means they remember how you made them feel, and they'd stake their reputation on you. And this is where the Talmudic principle of covenant comes in again. You're not maintaining a contact list. You're maintaining a network of mutual obligation and goodwill. Every time you show up with value and no ask, you're making a deposit in that relationship. And those deposits accumulate. They compound. And when the moment comes, when your client's colleague mentions a problem over coffee that sounds exactly like what you solve, that deposit gets withdrawn. Not by you, by the client, because they want to help their colleague, and you've made it easy and safe for them to do so. Step 4. Create a feedback loop so you can improve. This is the part that separates deliberate practice from just doing the work. Every time you get a referral, ask yourself, what specifically about this relationship generated it? Was it the quality of the work? Was it the follow-up? Was it a specific moment that stood out? And every time you don't get a referral from a strong relationship, ask yourself, what was missing? Did I end the project poorly? Did I fail to make the referral easy? Did I drop out of touch? Keep a simple log, not a complex CRM system, just a notebook or a spreadsheet with 3 columns, the client's name, the last meaningful interaction, and what you gave them. Gave doesn't mean a gift. It means value and insight, a connection, a piece of useful information. If you look at that log and see clients you haven't contacted in 6 months, that's your feedback signal. If you see clients where the last interaction was you asking for something, that's your feedback signal. This is the mechanism of deliberate practice applied to relationship building. You're not just networking. You're systematically improving your ability to build and sustain trust-rich relationships that naturally generate referral chains. Let me give you a concrete scenario to make this real. Suppose you're a consultant, any kind of consultant, and you've just finished a 3-month engagement with a mid-size company. The project went well. The client is happy. The stakeholders gave positive feedback. Now what? Most consultants at this point send a final report, a thank you email, and an invoice. Then they move on to the next project. 6 months later, they realize they need new clients, so they start cold pitching again. They spend weeks, maybe months, trying to get meetings with strangers who have no reason to trust them. Now imagine a different approach. Instead of disappearing after the project, you schedule a 30-minute debrief call, not to review the work, but to understand the client's next set of challenges. You're not trying to sell the next project. You're trying to understand their world. During that call, you learn that they're about to restructure their sales team, and they're struggling with how to onboard new reps effectively. You happen to know someone who specializes in sales onboarding for companies of that size, so you make the introduction. You've just given your client value beyond what they paid for. You've solved a problem they didn't even ask you about, and you've done it by connecting them with someone else, not by selling yourself. What happens next is predictable. Your client feels grateful. They feel seen. And because you connected them with someone valuable, their brain categorizes you not as that consultant we hired, but as someone who understands our business and has a network of people who can help. That's a fundamentally different mental category. The first one is a vendor. The second one is a trusted advisor. Vendors get replaced. Trusted advisors get referred. 2 months later, that client is at an industry event. Someone mentions they're looking for a consultant with your expertise. Your client doesn't just say, "Oh yeah, I know someone." They say, "You have to talk to this person." They don't just do the work, they actually understand how businesses work. They connected us with someone who solved a problem we didn't even know how to articulate. That's a referral that no cold email in the world can compete with. And here's the thing, you didn't ask for it. You didn't use a script. You didn't send a referral request email. You built the road. The client chose to drive on it. That's the difference between a referral tactic and a referral system. Now let me raise something that's uncomfortable but necessary, because this is where a lot of people get stuck and nobody talks about it. What if you did good work, built a good relationship, and the client still doesn't refer you? What then? It happens a lot. And the worst thing you can do is take it personally or start questioning whether your work was good enough. Here's the reality: some people are not natural connectors. They don't think in terms of who do I know who needs this. Some people are private about their business relationships. Some people are just busy and it never crosses their mind. None of that has anything to do with how they feel about you or the quality of your work. So you need to hold two truths simultaneously. 1. Build every relationship as if it will generate referrals. 2. Don't attach your emotional state to whether any individual relationship does. This is the paradox of detachment that I mentioned earlier. You design for the outcome without needing the outcome. That's not contradictory. That's strategic maturity. And from a brain science perspective, this matters for a very practical reason. When you're attached to the outcome, when you need this referral to pay next month's bills, your behavior changes in ways you can't fully control. Your tone shifts, your follow-up feels pressured. Your client's amygdala picks up on it, even if they can't articulate why. And the very attachment that's driving your behavior is the thing that reduces the probability of the outcome you want. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for strategic planning and impulse control, works best when the amygdala is calm. When you're anxious about outcomes, the amygdala hijacks resources from the prefrontal cortex. Your decision-making gets worse. Your social calibration gets worse. You say things you wouldn't say if you were calm. You push when you should wait. You ask when you should give. This is why financial stability and emotional regulation are not separate from sales strategy. They are sales strategy. If you're always operating from a place of financial desperation, your referral system will never work, no matter how good your scripts are. Because desperation leaks through every interaction, and people can smell it, not metaphorically, but neurologically, through the subtle cues that mirror neurons are built to detect. Let me push this even further, because there's a structural insight here that I think is the most important thing I'll say in this entire video. When you look at people who have built sustainable, high-revenue businesses, not flash-in-the-pan viral brands, but actual enduring businesses, almost all of them have one thing in common. The majority of their new business comes from existing relationships. Referrals, repeat clients, warm introductions, word of mouth. The exact percentage varies by industry, but the pattern is consistent. And this tells you something profound about where individual entrepreneurs and professionals should focus their energy. If you're a solo operator or a small team, you do not have the resources to compete in the cold outreach game at scale. You don't have the ad budget, the content team, the brand recognition, the infrastructure. Trying to compete on those terms is like bringing a slingshot to a missile fight, but you have something that large companies can never replicate. The depth of your personal relationships. A Fortune 500 company cannot build the kind of trust that you can build with a single client over a 3-month engagement. They don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the continuity. Their account managers change every 18 months. Their processes are standardized, not personalized. This is your structural advantage, and most individual professionals completely ignore it. They spend 80% of their time trying to find new clients and 20% serving existing ones, when the ratio should be inverted. Serve deeply, follow up intentionally. Build the referral architecture into every engagement, and let the compound interest of trust do what compound interest always does: grow slowly at first, then suddenly. This is what Naval means when he talks about leverage that doesn't require your time. A referral is leverage. Once a client refers you, you've acquired a new prospect without spending any additional time on prospecting. That's asymmetric. That's how individuals compete with institutions. not by outspending them, but by outtrusting them. Let me also address the B2B context specifically, because this is critical and it changes the dynamics significantly. In B2B, business to business, referrals carry even more weight than in consumer markets. Here's why. When a business leader is looking for a service provider, a consultant, a strategist, a technical expert, a creative partner, they are making a high-stakes decision. If they hire the wrong person, it costs them time, money, credibility, maybe their job. The risk is real. So they do what all humans do when the stakes are high. They look for social proof from people they trust. A cold email from you is noise. A LinkedIn message from you is noise. A recommendation from their trusted colleague is signal. It cuts through everything. It bypasses the usual skepticism, the who is this person barrier, the why should I care barrier. It lands differently because it comes wrapped in someone else's credibility. And here's the thing about B2B referrals that makes them even more powerful. They tend to be lateral. Meaning the person your client refers you to is usually at a similar level, in a similar industry, facing similar problems. So the referral is not just warm, it's pre-qualified. You're not just getting an introduction. You're getting an introduction to someone who is likely to need exactly what you do. That's not a lead, that's a gift. This is why I keep coming back to the B2B focus as the strategic choice for knowledgeable professionals. The consumer market rewards volume, virality, and emotional provocation. The business market rewards expertise, trust, and relationships. If you're someone with real knowledge and genuine skill, the business market is where your value is properly recognized and properly compensated. Now here's what I want you to do this week. Not next month, this week. First, make a list of your last 10 clients or professional interactions. For each one, answer this question honestly. When was the last time I contacted them with something valuable? Not a pitch, not a check-in, but something genuinely useful to them. If the answer is more than 3 months ago for any of them, that's your first action item. Reach out. Share an article, ask about their business, offer an introduction, do something that deposits value without withdrawing anything. Second, for your next client engagement, the one you're in right now or the next one you start, design one specific peak moment and one specific end moment that exceeds expectations. Write it down, plan it, don't leave it to chance. Memorability is not an accident, it's a design choice. Third, craft your referral description, not a pitch. A description of the specific problem you solve and the specific type of person or company that struggles with it. Make it concrete enough that someone could hear it and immediately think of someone they know. Test it with a friend. If they can't picture a specific person after hearing it, it's too vague. Refine it until it's sharp. Fourth, set up a simple tracking system. It doesn't need to be complicated. A spreadsheet with 4 columns: name, last contact, what value I provided, next planned touchpoint. Review it every Friday. This takes 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes are worth more than 5 hours of cold outreach. And fifth, and this is the one that most people resist, practice not caring about the outcome. Not in a nihilistic way, but in a focused way. Every time you notice yourself calculating whether a client will refer you, redirect that energy toward delivering better work or providing more value. The calculation is the enemy of the connection. Drop the calculation and the connection deepens. And when connections deepen, referrals happen, not because you engineered them, but because trust, when it reaches a certain depth, naturally overflows into the world. I want to leave you with this. The entire modern economy is obsessed with scale. More leads, bigger funnels, wider reach, and there's a place for all of that. But for the individual, for the person with real knowledge, real skill, and the discipline to build something that lasts, the most powerful growth strategy is also the oldest one. It's not about reaching more people. It's about going deeper with the people you've already reached. Wealth, real wealth, is not the result of how many strangers see your ad. It's the result of how many people trust you enough to put their own name on the line when they recommend you. That trust is not scalable through technology. It's scalable through consistency, integrity, and the deliberate practice of treating every single client interaction as the seed of something larger. Charlie Munger said the best way to get what you want is to deserve what you want. Naval said to play long-term games with long-term people. The Talmudic tradition says your word is your bond and your reputation is your wealth. The neuroscience says trust compounds, desperation repels, and the peak end rule governs memory. It all points to the same place. Your next client is not just a project. Your next client is a doorway to 10 relationships you haven't met yet, 5 problems you haven't solved yet, and a reputation that will do your selling for you long after the conversation is over, but only if you build the road. Nobody drives on a road that doesn't exist, so build the road. If you found this valuable, follow along here or wherever you watch. I'll keep going deeper on these ideas, and drop a comment below. Here's what I want to know. Think about the best referral you ever received, as a client or as a professional. What specifically made you trust that recommendation? Was it the person who referred, the way they described it, the timing? I'd love to hear what made that moment click for you.